Welcome to Drawn Onward. I'm your host, Teresa Janzen, and today my guest is Robyn Mulder. Together we're talking about tools and techniques for battling depression. Well, welcome to Drawn Onward. I'm your host, Teresa Janzen, and today I have a very special guest with me. This is Robyn Mulder, and she's one of the co-contributing authors to Life Repurposed. Welcome, Robyn.
Thank you, Teresa. It's so good to be here. I'm really glad to talk to you today.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you too, because you are from my home state of Michigan, is where you are originally from. Is that right?
Yes, I grew up in Michigan all the way through till I went to college in Iowa. So yeah, it's a good state.
Which part of Michigan are you from? I'm from Southwest Michigan.
Me too. Yeah, I grew up in Wyoming. It's a suburb of Grand Rapids.
Yeah. So I grew up in Allegan County, and then we lived in Grand Rapids or north of Grand Rapids just before we moved to South Sudan. So that's my home stomping grounds. But now you're in South Dakota, and I don't think I've ever spent any time in South Dakota. Maybe I've driven through there. So tell me, if I were to come and visit you and you wanted to take me somewhere to show me what life is really like in South Dakota, where would we go?
Well, if you visited us right here in Platte, where I live, I would take you down to the Missouri River. It's about, 10, 15 miles west of us. And it's beautiful. It's there's a dam further downriver, so it's a mile wide where we are, and people come here to go fishing and camping, and lots of campgrounds in the area. But South Dakota is really known for the Black Hills area, Mount Rushmore, and that's a really beautiful part of the state with lots of hiking trails and outdoor activities, and so.
Great. Well, I love the outdoors. So when I come, I'll bring my hiking boots and we'll go somewhere. That's great. Well, Robyn, I love the story that you wrote for Life Repurposed. And I love the analogy that you use of decorating and home decor, because I have to admit that I am a little bit addicted to HGTV, at least when I'm in the US. We don't have that here in South Sudan. So I really like decorating, even though I don't really have a house and can't decorate myself. But I do think that personal space is really important. And one of the things I like to write about is recreating Eden or in your atmosphere, how that is a really spiritual connection. So how do you feel about the physical environment? And of course, your story is a bit more about the internal environment. Why did you choose that decorating analogy?
Well, to be honest with you, I think I picked it because the calls for submissions for Michelle's book, Life Repurposed, talked about that, about taking things and repurposing, like with decorating. And so I thought, well, I can, kind of look at how we've moved to different houses over the years. My husband's a pastor, and how we haven't always been able to decorate as if it were our own house, because we live in a parsonage. But then I just applied that to, compared it to decorating the mind, and how we can redecorate when the thoughts in there are, not very pretty and not good. I'm not really a very good decorator to begin with. I mean, some people really, change their, furnishings all the time and move things around. And I'm not really, that's not my thing exactly. But I've really been learning a lot the last few years about what it means to change how I'm thinking. And so, yeah, that's the comparison that I made.
Okay. I've only moved a few times in my life, but I do know that the first thing that I do when I move is I want to put something on the walls. And so now thinking about what you were saying with decorating the mind, that just happens automatically. We put stuff on the walls of our mind. And sometimes those negative things are the things that are really sticky, and they stick to the walls and they don't come off. That's kind of what your story is about, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I think that most of us, well, the mind just kind of defaults to the negative and the hard things of life a lot of times. And so we have to really make an effort to change those things to more positive messages, more truth instead of the lies that Satan tries to tell us and tries to get us thinking. Yeah, our minds want to keep us safe from danger, but the reality is now we don't have as many dangers as they used to have, like in caveman times. They were trying to keep safe from wild animals and things like that. We don't have too much of that in our environment, but we still kind of react to things in our lives and negative thoughts going in our minds. And with time, thinking the same thoughts over and over again, those pathways are kind of engraved and into our brains, and it gets easier and easier to think those things. So it takes a lot of effort and intentionality to change those.
So I heard one time, at least in parenting, that for every one negative thing a child hears, they need to hear 10 positive things to kind of overcome that. Do you think that's kind of the same way it works internally? If we have one negative thought, do we have to tell ourselves a certain number of positive thoughts to overcome that? Or do you know any research on that?
Oh, I I don't have any facts and figures on the top of my head about that, but it wouldn't surprise me to hear that that is true. I know that they estimate that we think uh, about 60 or 70,000 thoughts go through our heads every day. And so it's just amazing. And most of those, like 90% of them, are all the same thoughts. So we really get into the same patterns and things of how we're thinking, and our brain wants to default to the easiest thing, the thing that's most comfortable for it. And so when we tend to think the negative, it will default to that all the time, and we'll keep thinking the negative. That's why it's so important to be intentional about catching what we're thinking and saying to ourselves, no, that is not what the Bible says. That is not true. I'm telling myself a lie right now, and we need to replace it with truth instead, so that those pathways in our brains will move over into better pathways instead of just the old negative ones.
So I really like what you just said, because it's not enough just to say that's a lie. But you have to carve a new pathway for your brain. So you have to replace it with something true. And I think the
Right.
Bible talks about that too, is to fill ourselves with the Spirit, not just empty ourselves of negative thoughts. We have to actually fill ourselves with the things of God.
Right. Yeah. Philippians 4:8 says, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about these things. And that is something that I really try to do, because I know that for some reason over the years, I usually default to more negative things and things that are not true, or that are not very admirable at times.
I wonder why that is, because that's definitely the case for me too. I say I'm a recovering perfectionist, and as much
Yep.
as I try to be perfect, what I tell myself all the time is how imperfect I am. And why is that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's personality in some cases. It's habits that we've gotten into. Birth order probably goes into it a little bit sometimes too, that, I'm the oldest daughter. And so I just kind of always wanted to be, doing the right thing and being perfect. And I'm realizing and getting more comfortable with the fact that I cannot be perfect, and I have to let it go when I make a mistake and fail someone or fail myself, and just keep plugging away and keep trying the best I can, and trust God that He'll cover over those failures and mistakes.
Now, yeah, I'm also an oldest daughter, and I think that does come into it some, or maybe even a lot, because I've talked to a few other people who have those perfectionism tendencies. And so far, we seem to all be oldest childs or oldest daughters, one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
now the fact that you're a pastor's wife also puts a lot of pressure on the situation. At least typically, historically, or traditionally, pastors' wives are kind of held to a pretty high standard and everyone's watching. Or do you find that also to be a challenge?
I would say probably early Gary was a farmer before he went into the ministry. So our lives changed a lot after we had been married for a while and living on the farm. I think I felt more of that pressure when we first got into the ministry and went to our first church in Minnesota. And not that they put a lot of pressure on me, I just felt a lot of pressure internally. And I feel like we've lived in very gracious congregations. Hopefully it's changing in everywhere, that people aren't putting as much pressure on pastors' wives to be better, or I feel like our congregations have accepted me for who I am, and they don't try to expect me to do certain roles. So that's been good. I'm a little bit quirky sometimes, and they've kind of accepted that and love me in spite of my quirks. And yeah, it's been good.
Maybe even because of your quirks.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope quirky is a good thing because I think I qualify.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know for you, these negative thoughts that were decorating your mind led to a time when you really struggled with depression. And how has that been, kind of digging out of that? And as you said, redecorating with new images in your mind.
Yeah. Well, I'm still working on that because I had dealt with depression off and on over the years, ever since probably during my college years. I started to feel it, and we would move somewhere, I would kind of feel another bout of depression come on. But went back in 2014, I tried a teaching job, and that really, just after only a month of teaching, got me into a deep depression that I had to go to the hospital for about a week or so to you know get better. And since then, I've really been trying to learn more and more how to pick healthy things for me, for my emotional health. And so part of that is watching what I'm thinking and changing those things if I notice that I'm starting to think in really negative ways about myself, about situations. And yeah, I think it's going to be a journey that is going to take me through the rest of my life. It's not something that I'm just going to all of a sudden, leave depression behind. It's really hard. And yet I'm glad for that major depressive episode, because it finally got me to the place where I dealt with my depression. Before that, it was kind of, I had another bout with depression. I kind of white knuckled it and just, held on until it passed. And that really got me so hopeless that I had to get it taken care of and get some help for it. And through counseling, some medicine for a while, just learning different things about ways to think, and different, so having a support group, all those things kind of got me to better places emotionally. And I'm hoping that it'll keep getting better, and yeah, and that I can help other people too that might be going through it.
So if someone's listening to this program right now and they've been in the midst of what you just described, that white knuckle experience, because I think that is the tendency. People will say, they minimize it so much, but it's quite dangerous. And what would you say to someone if they're listening right now and they have been just trying to hang on until it turns around?
Well, I guess I would say don't suffer needlessly. Depression is very treatable between, medications and getting some counseling for things that might be, contributing to depression. It's very treatable, and you don't have to suffer needlessly. I mean, there might still be down times that you go through, but you don't have to just hold on and try to get through it on your own. You can get help, and it's very important because, yeah, if you let it go too long, it can become chemical, clinical, and some people don't come back from that because they choose the path of suicide instead of, hanging on, and that's really, really sad when that happens.
Yeah, it's a potentially fatal condition for sure.
Yes.
I think that's the ultimate path. If it's left untreated and it progresses, that can be the ultimate path. So it is very important. It's nothing to minimize. And then likewise, if someone has a loved one in their family who seems really down, how can we support someone who is really struggling with depression?
Well, you can show them as much love as possible and let them know that you're there for them. Give them a safe place where they can talk about how they're feeling. I think it's a really tricky thing for a loved one, because you have to find that balance between, you don't want to let them wallow too much in their feelings and their depression if they're really struggling, and you don't want to push them too hard. So finding that balance and, encouraging them to get help is important. And I think my husband still is trying to figure out that right balance. He's really good about letting me talk through what I'm going through. But a loved one, there could be a time where you notice that your spouse, your child, whoever's going through it, is struggling so much that it's dangerous, and you need to, force them to go to the hospital, go to the doctor, and get some help for it.
So as you've been walking this journey, what has been some of the spiritual, could I say, are there spiritual benefits to the path that you have been on?
I don't know if I would ever say that it's a benefit to be depressed, and yet it has pushed me closer to the Lord in some ways. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, of course, but the times that I've gone through feeling more depressed, a lot of times I'll go to my Bible and gain support and strength from that. Although I am learning that, it's much better for me to go to my Bible first and not wait until I'm feeling so depressed. I notice a big correlation between how much time I'm spending in the Word and how I'm feeling. So yeah, that's kind of a cyclical thing too, that the less, if I spend less time in the Word, I feel more depressed. If I spend more time in the Word, I feel better. I don't want to say I'm glad I have depression, but I do appreciate it more now that I've gone through it and have learned from it. I think, well, for example, the other day I was talking with my mom and dad, and they had read the chapter out of Life Repurposed. And my mom said, "I'm so sorry that I passed that on to you," because depression kind of runs on my mom's side of the family. And I think we were texting back and forth, and I just texted back, "That's okay. I think it makes my life richer somehow to have this. I'm glad that I can relate to people that are going through it too. I wish that it could be, that no one would have to suffer with it, but I'm glad that I can kind of understand what someone's going through when they express how they're feeling."
I think one of the things that I learned when writing my story is that, of course, I don't think we write stories like this to build ourselves up. Your story,
No.
my story, these aren't things that we write because we want people to, even because we want people to know about it perhaps it would be easier if no one knew,
Yeah.
And yet somehow we come to a point of realizing that these difficult things that we go through, things that we've struggled with, can be beneficial to someone else.
My husband and I have, we run a support group at our church. It's called Fresh Hope. So it's a resource that's online. They have support groups around the United States and actually around the world. They're really expanding into a lot of Spanish-speaking countries recently. And that has been really great because people can come to the support group a couple times a month and we'll watch a little video or read an article and get to talk about the symptoms and the things that we can do to just support each other and get through those hard times. Also, just online, I'm in a Facebook group with Christians suffering from depression and anxiety. I can, support people that way. And I started a private Facebook group, Catch Your Thoughts with Robyn Mulder, where I try to share some resources to just help people think about, how we're thinking and how we can catch those thoughts and try to turn them around to go in better directions.
I love that name, Catch Your Thoughts, because like you said before, the default pattern of the brain is to go to the path that's well worn. And we have to catch ourselves falling into that worn path, which makes a rut. I remember a sermon I heard one time that talked about getting stuck in a rut. And oftentimes we think of a rut as being a negative thing. But if the rut is a good rut, you want to be stuck in that rut,
Right.
So kind of those tractor tires on the farm, they make ruts. Yeah. Well, if the ruts are in the right place, then just ride that rut, right down the road. You'll keep going straight. But if you have a rut that's leading you in a wrong direction, you've got to get out of that and change it and make a new path.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you think about that, if you have tire tracks going in the wrong place, it's going to take a lot of going over that spot over and over again before you'll actually get the tractor to go into the right ruts. We have to keep reinforcing the positive thoughts and the things we're trying to think that are different from our old negative ways.
Yeah. So catching those thoughts, do you have other people who can help you or also? Because my husband, I know, will let me know when my thoughts are going negative.
So. Yep. Yeah. My husband is very good at that too. I don't like to admit it sometimes. But he's very good at that because he's a lot of times my sounding board. If I go through something and it really brings up a lot of emotion in me, I feel, bad about something, I'll talk it through with him and he'll point out, okay, you're thinking this way, but they really, probably didn't mean anything by it, or you don't have to take all that on, whether it's guilt or shame or, he's very good about helping me to look at things objectively and choosing to think about them differently.
I'm not always very gracious, I have to admit. When my husband tells me that I'm being negative, it's actually the last thing in the world I want to hear. Because then I feel even more negative. But and that's where having a support group or accountability or a pattern or just knowing you have a tool you can pull out, I think that is a really good thing. I love that you also talked about prevention, like a prophylaxis. If you can take a preventative medicine for depression, and for you've found that the Bible really helps with that, being in a healthy pattern of reading.
Right. Yeah, it's one of the tools that keeps me healthy. I even last week, I think I had read my Bible on Saturday morning, and then I didn't read again till Wednesday morning. And I was like, I wrote on my journal page when I was doing devotions, too long between devotions, and it shows. And because I had been feeling really bad about some things at the beginning of the week, and just getting back into the Bible and thinking about God instead of just myself, it really changed my thoughts around, and I ended the week a lot better than I began it. So
yeah, I know for me too, sometimes music, praise music, things like that will help. And I think everyone needs to find the tools that is helpful for them. What was that process like for you as you were searching for your tools?
I had some counseling for a while, and that gave me some tools to look at how I was thinking and how I was acting. Also, let's see, the support group, talking with other friends that had gone through depression. Just I think, and God just kind of brings things into my life every once in a while that help. Someone's podcast, their blog post. The Holy Spirit can work in our lives in all sorts of ways. Songs, like you said, music can be helpful, and we just need to take it from wherever God brings it.
Absolutely. And speaking of some of those resources, you have a blog where you put regular blog posts out. Is that specifically about positive thinking and that, or could it be anything?
It's I do write about that quite often because it's what I'm thinking about a lot of times. But I do what's called Focus Friday. And so I usually just kind of take something that I've been going through in my life that week, and I write about that and make some spiritual applications. So sometimes it's very serious. Sometimes it's a little bit more funny if something goofy happened to me and I want to just tell people about it and draw some spiritual applications. So it's usually things about faith or mental health, being productive, because I tend to procrastinate. And so whenever I have some insights to help myself along, I write about that sometimes just to process it and encourage other people in that area too.
Wow, another thing you and I have in common. And that's another thing that will get me going in a negative direction is when I have a lot of things on my plate and I'm kind of avoiding those. So, Robyn, what do you have coming up next? Now that you have your first publication is out, and let me show the book so that we see it. Life Repurposed.
I'll show it
you have yours?
Yeah, I got mine too.
Right. Good. What's coming up next for you?
Well, talking about perfectionism and procrastination, I am working on a book about depression and how we can all stay healthy emotionally, but I just keep moving forward slowly. And if I would work on it a little harder, I could get there faster, but I guess it's in God's timing. I'm working on a proposal and hoping to get something going on that very soon.
Okay, great. We'll be watching for that. And
thanks.
In the meantime, we'll check out all the resources you have online. And thank you so much for sharing your story. That's not easy to talk about things like this because, people have a lot of different thoughts and opinions and feelings about it. But I know that there's someone listening who's really glad that you shared your story.
Oh, I hope so. I'm praying for people that they'll find help for depression. It's a big problem right now. And thank you for letting me talk about it today.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And I think you're right. Right now, people have been disconnected from a lot of the support structures and things they've had. So I've heard that depression is really on the rise right now, and even among young people.
Yes. Yep.
So what we can do to help ourselves and those self-thoughts and self-talk and things are probably more important than ever, and online resources. So thank you once again, Robyn.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa. It was really good to talk with you today.
Drawn Onward is more than an amazing palindrome. It's a production of teresajanzen.com.